aí de toda a tecnologia, mas acho que a gente conseguiu, com a ajuda da Ana Paula, da Ana Biglione, do Lucas, do Alcir, da Federação, então conseguimos nos organizar. Alan and Sue, so happy you are here. Falei um pouco em inglês. Thank you for being with us in this morning, Saturday morning in São Paulo. Cold Saturday morning, but we are happy to hear you and have you in our webinar. Então, muito contentes de ter Alan e Sue aqui hoje de manhã em nosso webinar, com essa questão tão interessante. Toda a compreensão começa com o maravilhar-se. Que incrível! Já comecei maravilhada essa manhã com essa possibilidade e espero que vocês também estejam bem dispostos para esse webinar da Faculdade Rudolf Steiner, junto com Alan e Sue, e as meninas que estão desenvolvendo o curso de facilitação de processos, junto com a Faculdade Rudolf Steiner, e queria dar as boas-vindas e desejar um excelente evento para todos nós. Espero que a tecnologia nos ajude e que a gente consiga se organizar aqui. Então, muito bom dia. Ana Biglione, você quer dizer mais alguma coisa? Quer dar as boas-vindas também?
Acho que só agradecer, né? Agradecer, acho que o convite da faculdade, agradecer a presença de todos e do Alan e da Sue, que se disponibilizaram a trazer para a gente essas reflexões, dizer que a gente está muito feliz com esse encontro, com a presença de todo mundo, e dizer que a Ana Paula, que é a nossa coordenadora dessa pós que você mencionou, vai estar traduzindo aí, então a gente vai ouvir pouco a voz dela e ouvir muito a voz dela. Mas é isso, só celebrar. Obrigada, Melanie, e acho que é com Alan e com a Sue.
Passamos a palavra.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Thank you very much, Anna, for this introduction and for this welcome. Thank you, Ana Paula, for your translation, which for us is always a real gift to experience. And greetings to everybody. It's afternoon time for us, and good morning to all of you. We greet you from Cape Town, and we are going to be speaking with you and then opening up a space for conversation amongst us with this title about all learning begins with wonder. And we wanted to say to you that we've thought quite a bit about how we wanted to speak with you today. And we thought that we have already done some preparatory work, and we know that those people who are going to be attending this course through the Rudolf Steiner College on reflective social practice and process facilitation will be learning a lot about all the dimensions and avenues of this practice. So we felt that we wanted to work with them. We wanted to do something that we have not ever done before. And because phenomenology is really a fundamental aspect of this practice, we wanted to work phenomenologically in this webinar today. In other words, rather than trying to speak about a reflective social practice and about process facilitation, we ourselves wanted to have a phenomenological conversation phenomenologically. In other words, not talking about phenomenology, but being phenomenological with one another through conversation, which means that whatever we're going to be saying today is completely unrehearsed and really arises out of the moment, because that is what phenomenology is. It is that space between you and me, that space between myself and the world, that in-between space, which in each moment uniquely arises a phenomenon which belongs in that moment and then dissolves as soon as that moment is over. And so we are wanting to practice that in this conversation between us today, which we will then open up to you. So over to you.
We are essentially having a conversation, and then we want to open the conversation up wider. We have no idea how long our conversation between us is going to take, or where exactly it's going to go. And we have to work out how to do this collectively as the time goes on. So we thought that the way we can have a conversation like this is to take a set of phenomenological quotations, or I could say quotations from phenomenologists. A number of those quotations, because the essence of phenomenology is its enigmatic character. It's doing two things at the same time. We are understanding the world as it is, but it's we who are understanding that world. There's already an enigmatic relationship in that kind of polarity. And part of getting inside of the phenomenological approach is to be able to live inside that often seemingly contradictory polarity. So we're going to take a series of quotations and talk about them. They're not quotations that we have chosen for this process. They're a set of quotations that we wrote down some years ago, and we thought, well, let's look at these now, from where we are now. The title, I want to start with the title, because the title says, all knowledge begins with wonder. And we didn't choose that title. It was chosen for us, I think. So it's a good place to start, because something comes towards us and we have to make meaning of it. So there are two things for me about the title before we go any further. The one is that underneath, when you got your invitation, it said, all knowledge begins with wonder. And then it said, what does Goethe mean by that? Well, if you know what Goethe meant by that, you know more than we do. Because Goethe was either in a room somewhere writing over 200 years ago, or he was talking to somebody. Here's a statement. We don't know what Goethe meant by that. There isn't a final objective static truth, meaning that is locked away in a box somewhere that we can discover. We can only meet what Goethe was trying to indicate by our own reaching for meaning. So the meaning is something which emerges as we speak about it, as we think about it, as we collectively look at it. So meaning will emerge, and that's the meaning. That's the meaning that is important. We don't know, we can't know exactly what Goethe meant. Meaning is a present participle. It is in the moment. So what meaning do we make of all knowledge begins with wonder? I could carry on.
I'll carry on a bit.
Something strikes me when I think of all knowledge begins with wonder, and that is that phenomenologically, it's a dangerous thing to impose your own thinking on the phenomenon that we're observing. We have to open ourselves to allow the phenomenon to enter us. So when Goethe says, all knowledge begins with wonder, it already seems like a contradiction, because oh, we have to have wonder. We have to impose wonder on this object in order to discover its meaning. It seems like a phenomenological contradiction. You see something ordinary in front of you and you think, oh, I must have wonder before I can understand it. That is an imposition. But the subtle, so I wondered about that. The subtle shift in thinking may be something like this. Wonder can never be any kind of imposition. Wonder, what wonder does, if you look at anything with wonder, it opens that phenomenon up. It is never, wonder cannot be, because of the nature of wonder, it cannot be an imposition. It can only help to illuminate, to open, to make wider, to enlarge. And so, carry on?
I was thinking, there are a number of things about that I was thinking. The first is that each time I meet this statement that comes from Goethe, I experience it differently, because I experience it in the moment as it is speaking to me, because it is emerging out of a specific experience or particular conversation that I've been having, and that feeling of wonder arises in me. So perhaps part of this conversation between us is that whatever statements we're going to be working with today speak to each of us differently at every moment, because that is in the nature of a phenomenological experience. It is absolutely grounded in a context which is present. What I was thinking, or what was coming up for me about this statement of all knowledge begins with wonder, was two aspects. The one is that wonder is an experience that can only be in the present. It is absolutely part of what it means to be present. You cannot capture the wonder that you felt in the past, and you can't anticipate wonder for the future. It arises out of your own perception and experience and observation of something that is happening for you in the moment. And the other thing which connects strongly with what you were saying is that it requires a certain openness, a deep openness in us, that the world that we are encountering can enter into us, can touch us, can illuminate something in us. And I guess another element to this is that you cannot feel wonder without your heart being moved in the space. Wonder is for me an experience that comes out of my thinking imbued with my feeling, and my feeling imbued with my thinking.
But why, if that is true, would wonder lead to knowledge?
Because I
said, but why, if that is true, would wonder lead to knowledge?
Because I think that we can only really know the world when we know it out of that felt sense and experience of the phenomenon, rather than an accumulation of information and facts about the phenomenon.
Okay. So that's going to say something about our way of knowing and the knowledge that comes from our way of knowing, and that in a way you could then say true knowledge is not simply intellectual knowledge.
Yeah.
It's not abstract. It has to be felt, and the feeling has to do with the heart. That's what you're saying.
And that there's something about the activity of knowing which is the activity of knowing which leads to that knowledge.
Okay, so I'm then going to say, just for me, the last thing about wonder is that it turns out probably that it's a good title, because I mean, it's a good beginning, because I think, and certainly this happens with me, that when I read any of the quotes that we're going to be talking about today, each time when I look at them again, they fill me with wonder. They fill me with wonder for the world. They fill me with wonder for ourselves. They fill me with wonder for discovering this approach that we're calling the phenomenological approach, because they lift something that is inescapably poetic in the world itself. It cannot simply, knowledge cannot simply be a question of information. It's not possible when we're talking about real knowledge. So now we are going to talk about the first quotation, if that's okay, but we don't know how yet, because the technology of this is a little bit beyond us. So we're hoping that you will be able to see the quotation we're talking about in English and in Portuguese. So, but we don't know this for a fact. We're wondering if this is going to happen.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Maravilha. Okay, so now
you can start. But I just want to say something before you start, that when I think about these quotes in phenomenology, what I realize is that they keep me awake. They keep me on my toes. They keep me alive, because I can never, ever rest on how I understood it yesterday. It has to be, and they are elusive, and they are, what was the word that you used earlier? Enigmatic. Enigmatic, yeah.
They are, and yet it's a strange thing when I look at that sentence. Our activity of looking is a light that makes our world visible. Our activity of looking is a light that makes our world visible. I want to ask something of the technology. I wonder if people can write that down and then we can take it off the screen, because it's really difficult to be talking to you while we're looking at something that Ronald Brady wrote many years ago. Ronald Brady is no longer alive, and we need to see your faces. So we're hoping as we go that we can talk about this. Our activity of looking is a light that makes our world visible. That means that our world is a world of meaning. It means that when we look at a table or a chair or a person or a lion or a relationship, we are not, the thing that we're looking at, we are imbuing it, we are infusing it with meaning. We're making meaning of it. And when we make meaning of it, it is as though our thinking, our way of looking, is like a light that makes the world visible. So if we see things outside of ourselves that we cannot make sense of, they remain invisible. They remain darkened, we could say. But as soon as we understand, as soon as we make meaning of what we're looking at, and it can be the most simple thing, then it's as if a light has been shone on them and they become visible to us.
So what that makes me think about is the light of consciousness, because what is unconscious to us is invisible. And part of what this practice is inviting us to do is to make the world around us more visible through our consciousness as we look at it, and recognizing that what isn't conscious for us simply doesn't appear.
What isn't conscious for us simply doesn't appear.
Yeah.
So in other words, to the extent that we lack consciousness, to that extent, we're not even seeing the world around us. So if we have in a way blocked our consciousness in any sense because there are things we, for example, don't want to see, although we don't even realize we don't want to see them, then we simply don't see them and they don't exist for us. So I want to ask again if we can take the quote off the screen, and I want to just mention one. Everybody's changed position.
Yeah. It's not fair.
It's a way of getting people to move their chairs, to not sit in the same chair every time we come back from tea and back from lunch.
Do you think that's phenomenological?
I'm not sure. But I wanted to say one thing about the activity of looking. I've forgotten what it says now. Makes our world the activity of looking, I've got it here on another screen, is a light that makes our world visible. And that is a very beautiful, not beautiful, illustrative story that I read many, many years ago, that is attributed to a man called Martin Wachenschein, who is German, and a teacher, and a science teacher. And he said there is one thing that every teacher should teach every child. It is the most important lesson that every child can learn, should learn. And he said this: show a child a room which is darkened, a darkened room, and let a beam of light, like open a curtain, like these curtains behind us, you open them and light comes into the room. And the ambience of the room changes. It's not so dark anymore. That's all that happens. But then take a blanket and shake the blanket. And shaking the blanket will release particles of dust. And you will see that the light that is shining in will form like a pillar, like a spotlight in the room. And it will light up the dust particles. And suddenly with that light, you will see the particles of dust swirling in the light, dancing, and they will gravitate towards the edge of the light, and then they'll move into the darkness and they'll disappear. And then you realize that the dust enables us to see the light where it is shining. Before, we didn't see the shining of the light. We just saw a diffuseness. Now, because there are particles that the light reflects off, we can see the particles. The particles allow us to see the light, and the light allows us to see the particles. Every child should know that, he said, because the light is the light of consciousness. There are always two things in relationship. The light and dark. The particles are dark and the light reveals them. They reveal the light. And you can take that as an analogy for the process of thinking, for the process of consciousness. Our consciousness does the same thing with the world around us.
So I want to say one last thing about this particular quote before I think we should move on. And that is that from all that we've been saying, a fundamental aspect of this practice then is how we expand and deepen our consciousness, how we turn our attention through the discipline of observation to expand and deepen our experience of the world through our consciousness, expands the world that we are in and looking at and participating in. So we are participating through that light that we are turning in the coming into being of the world.
But then that also says that as the world expands, so we expand.
Exactly. So the world becomes larger because more and more of the world becomes visible to us. And since we are, with that wonder, allowing the world to enter into us, that world entering into us enlarges and transforms us because we are not separate from that which we are witnessing and observing. So as it enters into us, it transforms us.
Well, here, but then there's another little enigmatic thing. We're not separate from that world, but we also are separate from that world. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see it in a way that makes meaning. We're not simply immersed in it.
Yeah.
We are also able to see it outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's the genius, perhaps, of the human being.
Yeah.
And maybe that's another way of saying that there's no other being that we know of who can take a phenomenological approach.
So we can be inside and outside at the same time.
And now we've got another quote. The second quote, which we can have on the screen, please, for a little bit, and then whoever wants to can write it down, and then we can take it off. The more we observe the parts, the more the whole reveals itself. I just have to say again, each of these quotes is the same thing. They seem like contradictions, or they seem enigmatic. Each part of the quote kind of interacts with the other part in a way that turns our thinking.
So,
thank you.
In any living organism, what we discover as we pay more and more attention to it is that the detail of that living organism is an expression of the whole of that organism. And if we want to really understand that living organism as a whole, we need to be able to really examine and perceive and observe and stretch to know each part, because each part, however diverse or variegated that part is, will bring us to an understanding of the whole. It makes me think about the physiognomy of a human being, the face of a human being. It's quite an extraordinary thing that with all the billions of people on this earth, billions, there are no two people whose faces are identical. So we have this extraordinary diversity. And we also have that all of us have the same features on our face. We all have eyes and nose and ears and mouth and hair and forehead and eyebrows. And yet each one is utterly unique. And the more we penetrate into the details of each of those parts, the more the character of that person becomes known to us, available to us. we can begin to have a sense for who that person is from their face, and how the different parts come together to give an expression of the character of that human being.
So there are two things that I'm thinking about now. The one is the word you use, character.
Or signature also.
The very simple and obvious thing that the whole is not a part. In other words, that the whole is not another part, because we often think of, we see in parts.
The whole is also not the sum of the parts. In that incremental way.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we can come there.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that just the simple recognition that if the whole is not the part, and it's not another part, it's not a super part that's more important than other parts, but it's still a part. If it's not a part, if it's a whole, then we're looking, when we talk about the whole, we're looking at something in a different dimension. It's not another part. Parts have boundaries and edges. That's why they are separate from each other. That's what makes them a part. But the whole is something that coheres, that brings together. And it is something that exists in another dimension without boundaries. And yet we can still say, as you were saying, it's that person and not that person. There is a character there, but the character is not something that you can give a number to, that you can give a boundary to, that you can give a definition to. So the quality of what a whole is radically different from the part.
And yet every part is an expression of that whole.
And yet, yeah, or you could say that the whole lives in every part, and the whole informs every part, which is also then to say that the whole is something active, where the part can be inert. The whole is something that is shaping the parts.
Yeah.
So it's an active something. There's something else that came to me about the quote itself. So I want to say the quote slowly. The more we observe the parts, the more the whole reveals itself. There is another way of saying the same sentence. You could say, the more, so this is a translation thing, Anna. The more we observe the parts, the more the whole is revealed. But that is not what Brady says. He says, the more we observe the parts, the more the whole reveals itself. That little switch is a revelation in itself. The whole is not something which is revealed. It's not like a part. Oh, now I see it. It is something that will only show itself to a particular kind of observation. And if that kind of observation is not there, the whole will remain invisible. The whole is active, and it interacts with us far more profoundly than we may imagine. It also has the power to reveal itself if we are looking with wonder, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. The word gaze came to me.
Yeah.
That there's something about quality, the word quality, and the notion of quality that comes up now, that there's a certain quality or gesture with which we observe the world. And it carries that, perhaps that curiosity, that real interest. And it requires active participation on our side. If we are passively passing through the world without paying attention in any way, the whole will never reveal itself. It can never reveal itself. So it requires something very intentional and active and curious and interested from us, that it may reveal itself. So it is this, again, this the space in between my gaze and this mystery, this invisible mystery of this phenomenon revealing itself through my active participation, through observation.
So because the whole is active, it requires us to be active in order to see it.
Yeah.
Passive observation will never reveal the whole.
That's right. And so it brings me back to the quote before, in a way, because we can walk through the world with most of the world being invisible because of the nature of our activity. And the more we observe the parts in the way that we're talking about now, the more the world becomes more and more visible. So those two quotes are very, very deeply connected with each other.
Yeah. Can we do the next one?
Well, let's ask Anna or Melanie, I'm not sure who, whether we should talk a bit more or whether we should open a space now. What is your feeling?
It is wonderful listening to you both. We are so happy. É maravilhoso escutar vocês dois falando. São pontos.
We're going to carry on for a...
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Carry on for a little more time.
Okay.
So here we have a long quote that we cannot ask Anna to take off because it takes too long. Let's just leave it on for a while. We need to enter into a special state in order to observe our own activity. While I look at the table, I'm conscious of the object, but not of my presence in relation to it.
Okay.
So,
all right, you want to go?
no, I'm happy.
Okay, so what comes to me now as I read this is, and I have to say that this quote then leads on from everything that we've been saying now. It's not a separate something. I really want to build on that. And what I want to say is that in that active participation with that particular gaze, that particular interest, that particular engagement with the world around us, there's another dimension that is really important, and that is the experience that we have of our own experience of what it is that we are observing. In other words, that we become witness to our own observation, because in that way we are then experiencing this, we're experiencing the table in this instance, not just as the object of our observation, but also ourselves as active participants in the process of observation. So that self-observation or witnessing becomes a really important element.
So I want to say what happens for me in that and in the quote is a realization of something that I think is one of the radical aspects of this practice we're calling a reflective social practice. Because on a certain level, to say a reflective social practice is simply to say, well, of course, we've been saying this for many, many years. But not we, I mean, people have been saying for many, many years. You do something, and then it would help to evaluate. Or you do something, and then you should reflect on what you've been doing. Because if you reflect on what you've been doing, then you can improve what you're doing, and you can do it better next time. That, for us, feels like a very flat and undynamic and bland way of proceeding. There's nothing at all actually phenomenological about it or radical about it. But what's being said here, and what Sue, I think, pointing to with this thing of self-observation and self-reflection, is that what Brady says is, normally, while I look at the table, I'm conscious of the object, but not of my presence in relation to it. But to look at the table and be conscious of your presence in relation to it is something we're suggesting has to be able to happen at the same time. It's simultaneous. It's not that I go into a meeting and we have the meeting, and then when the meeting's, well, I'm stopping for a moment. Normally, we have a meeting and then we rush off to do whatever we need to do. If we improve on that practice socially, then we can have a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, we can say, now let's stop for 10 minutes or 15 minutes and reflect on how the meeting has gone so that we learn from the process. But this level is another level further. It's saying, while you're having the meeting, you have to be reflecting on what you're saying, on how you're responding at the time that you're saying and responding, not only afterwards. We can do the afterwards, but the kind of observation we're talking about here is a reflective observation, or some people, I guess, have called it a contemplative observation, that you are very much present in what you are seeing, in the way you're seeing it. You're aware of yourself, not so that you become distant from what you're looking at, not so that you are not present to what you're looking at, but rather that being aware of yourself in the situation makes you even more present.
So as you're speaking, what comes to me is that there is, when you speak about a contemplative practice, I guess it's a particular kind of mindfulness, which is that it makes me think that we're simultaneously making meaning of the world around us all the time. We are observing and we're making meaning, and it is, the two are so closely connected, which comes to the next quote that we're going to be coming to. They're so closely connected that we almost are unable to separate them and distinguish them from ourselves. What is usually missing in our daily practice is the awareness of the meaning that we're making. And that awareness of the meaning that we're making, when we become witness to that, when we become simultaneously reflective of what we are doing and what we are saying, it adds that dimension of consciousness to our own practice for ourselves. And that self-reflective practice is part of what enables us to practice more consciously and mindfully in the world.
And so then I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
We are going to hit a time problem at some stage.
It's already 2:45.
And I know that, and I. Sorry. And I know that I am committed inside myself. I haven't said this to Sue, but I'm committed inside myself to at least working with the last quotation that we have here before we leave.
Okay.
So there are a number that, do you want to do the next one? Or
Well, I think we've kind of.
Should we do this one?
No, I think let's go to the last one because it's 10 to 3 already.
Can we shift? You can get there are 3 other quotes in between what we just finished and what we want to go to. But we want to take you to the last quote, please. It's the very, very last quote, and it's by Wittgenstein.
Anna, you've done, I think it's you, Anna, you've done this so beautifully.
Absolutely beautiful.
It really, really looks wonderful. And those, I think I recognize those flowers also.
So everybody can look at the flowers too. So this one says, nothing has changed, yet everything is different. I contemplate a face and suddenly notice its likeness to another. I see that it has not changed, and yet I see it differently. The expression of a change of aspect is the expression of a new perception, and at the same time of the perceptions being unchanged. What is incomprehensible is that nothing, and yet everything, has changed after all. So I want to leave that on for a while and just point out as a start, in the right at the end, he says, what is incomprehensible is that nothing, and yet everything has changed. So the word that I want to focus on for a moment is incomprehensible.
I knew that it would.
That is what is so glorious for me about this quotation, because he is saying what really, really makes the most profoundest of meaning is incomprehensible. We have to be able to think beyond what is easy to think. We have to be able to think in such a way that our thinking never, it's what you were saying earlier, our thinking never settles down. It never becomes familiar. It never relaxes. It's always on the edge of itself. It's never comfortable. It's always nervous. Maybe I don't understand this. In fact, if I really need to if I need to define it, I won't get it. But what he's saying is,
it never becomes stuck knowledge.
It never becomes stuck. In fact, it never becomes knowledge.
Exactly.
It has to be knowing that's being done in the present, which is the heart of phenomenology. It's not the kind of thing you can take to a company and say, oh, we have a knowledge management department and you can put it there. It's not that. It is about the process of knowing, and the process of knowing is also a process of learning all the time. It's active. So what he's saying is, when you see something and its aspect changes, in other words, oh, this person looks like somebody else I know, the perception is exactly the same. And yet the perception is completely different. I don't see this the way I saw it before, but it's the same thing. Everything has changed, but nothing has changed. So the way we see the world, if we see that something is like this, and then we realize, no, it's a little bit like that. It's the same world. But in reality, it's not the same world at all. And it depends on how we see it.
I don't know if I have anything to add to that.
Okay. Then
Yeah. Okay.
The last one. We want to do one more before we stop. Quickly. And it's the one that is the
And that's the Merleau-Ponty quote, please. Yeah.
The world is wholly inside me, and I am wholly outside of myself. Which I have to say is the quotation on this set of, in this set of quotations, that is one of the most powerful. It's one of the truest, if one can even say such a thing. And I have never known how to get closer to its meaning other than as it stands.
Yeah. And it remains an ongoing mystery that is elusive, and yet it's almost as if I know it through an embodied experience rather than trying to make sense of it actively with my thinking.
So it's something that comes, that it lights up our world sometimes. It's not something that you can take away and define. It's too enigmatic. It's too, it turns, it keeps turning. Every time you think you have it, it turns into its opposite. But I think it was Rudolf Steiner who said, we learn, the more we know about ourselves, the more we know about the world. If you want to learn about yourself, then observe the world closely. If you want to learn about the world, then observe yourself closely. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if that was Steiner or Goethe, but it's a similar thing to this one.
I think it's both.
Okay, I think that we would like to stop now, even though I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you like this. It's been great. And just to open up a space for the time that we have left to talk, to converse, to bring whatever it is that is stimulated for you through what we've been saying, what you would like to bring in, maybe a question, whatever.
We don't entirely know how long we have left.
Muito obrigada, muito bom. Temos algumas perguntas. Ana, você me ajuda, Biglione, com isso? Talvez a Clarissa Mendes. Quer colocar a Clarissa, depois o Sérgio, por favor? Antes, por favor, Clarissa.
Bom dia a todos, bom dia, Alan, Sue. Eu fiquei com vontade de trazer de volta a ideia do maravilhar-se. Eu não sei, eu fiquei aqui pensando se o maravilhar-se tem conexão com a percepção do todo. Eu tenho essa impressão que quando a gente percebe o todo de algo, há uma sensação de maravilhar-se com a percepção desse todo. Ao mesmo tempo, parece que para perceber o todo, eu preciso estar nesse estado também de maravilhamento, de certa forma. Parece uma coisa que uma coisa leva a outra e ao mesmo tempo acontece ao mesmo tempo, é uma coisa só, enfim, quase o que leva ao quê e não sei se eu me expliquei bem, mas o estado de maravilhamento em relação à percepção do todo de algo, se isso tem relação.
I just want to say yes. I think that what you're saying is absolutely right. And in a way, what you point to, which I think is wonderful, that it could so easily sound like a causal statement, that all knowledge comes from wonder, that wonder, that there is a causal relationship, and what you are actually pointing to is that it's simultaneous, that they are happening at the same time. And in a way, they're indivisible and they cannot happen without one another.
And that shift from causal and linear to simultaneous is one of the core qualities of phenomenology. More than qualities, one of the core realities of the world, actually. But hard to think.
Muito obrigada, Clarissa. Obrigada, Sue e Allan. Só para avisar, quem quer escutar a pergunta, precisa colocar no off, senão não escuta a pergunta também, tá certo? Se você está só na tradução, você não escuta a pergunta. Sérgio, sua vez, você faz em português, por favor.
Bom dia a todos. Bom dia, Allan, Sue. Eu vou falar sobre duas coisas que me mexeram nessa conversa, e uma delas é essa questão de maravilhar-se. Eu fico pensando que é uma possibilidade, assim, quando a gente encontra alguma coisa fora, né, de nós. Mas também eu acho que a gente pode entrar na compreensão de algo pela tristeza, ou pelo espanto, ou pela agonia, enfim, pela raiva, né? Eu acho que não é o maravilhar. Eu acho que tem uma conotação assim muito bonita, né? Mas eu acho que tem um caminho, principalmente quando a gente está numa conversa com uma outra pessoa. Eu acho que a gente pode começar a entender a partir de um outro sentimento também que surge, né? Que também tem relação com o todo também, eu acho. E sobre isso eu queria falar, porque eu tenho assim pensado muito nas relações que eu tenho na minha prática clínica, assim, como que às vezes a gente está escutando alguma coisa e o que a Sue falou, a gente está tentando trazer sentido, porque quando a gente olha uma mesa, parece mais fácil, assim, você olha, é uma mesa, mas quando você está ouvindo uma pessoa, você está tentando trazer o sentido, e às vezes também isso se mistura com coisas nossas, né? Com coisas que assim, com sentidos da nossa história. Então, é um processo que realmente... E você fica muito perdido mesmo, em determinados momentos, assim, né? Eu acho que quando a gente se auto-observa, assim, nesse processo de compreensão, você muitas vezes se perde mesmo e vive num caldo, assim, de indefinição, né? E aí você vai trazendo para esse caldo de indefinição um sentido e outro sentido, e aí você vai começando a diferenciar, e esse, para mim, é o jeito da gente se olhar, na verdade. É nesse lugar que a gente se perde mesmo, né? E aí, porque num primeiro momento, eu acho que para mim tem um paradoxo na questão do Goethe, que é quando você olha uma árvore, por exemplo, você fala, é uma árvore, e depois você às vezes para de olhar, né? Porque parece que já está compreendido. Mas aí eu acho que você tem que perder tudo que você tem para poder encontrar esse caminho de autoobservação, assim. Desculpa, eu falei muito, mas é o que me tocou.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Sergio, whether you're wanting a response to that, but what comes to me so immediately is to say again to you, yes, I agree with you completely in what you're saying. And so such an important element of this practice is the practice of self-understanding, because we need to be able to really understand our own filters that each one of us has through the way in which the world is either expanded or contracted for us through those filters. And the more understanding there is of ourselves, the more we are able to really come closer to seeing the world or the client or the table or any phenomenon on its own terms.
I just want to add, as you were speaking, I have this picture of phenomenology as a country. And we, as all of us, having grown up and made our worlds in other countries, and there is a place called phenomenology out there, and we're going to go on an adventure, and we're going to enter the land of phenomenology, and inside the land of phenomenology there are no maps, there are no place names. We are going to get lost, and we're going to have to find ourselves. That's the reality of entering the world of phenomenology.
And it's finding that world and ourselves simultaneously.
Yeah. So we, yeah.
Obrigada, Sérgio. Que tarefa difícil, Sue e Allan, essa, não? Mas vamos em frente. Dona Ute Kramer, por favor.
It's a difficult task, but it's the adventure. I don't think of it as a difficult task. I think if we're not prepared to get lost, how will we ever find? So the thought of that land, for me, it's there all the time, and we can enter it whenever we want, and we can genuinely be on an adventure rather than just leading these normal humdrum lives.
When you say that, what really occurs to me, it's beautiful that if we stay with what we know, we never learn anything more. We never grow ourselves more. We never understand the world more. And so there's something about staying with what we know is staying with that static notion of knowledge. But to be able to engage in discovering the unknown world has inner frontiers and outer frontiers, and that's the adventure.
Fantastic. Dona Ute, por favor.
Posso falar?
Sim.
Sim.
Então, muito obrigado, estou gostando bastante, porque eu realmente gosto de aventuras, sempre novas, já mais ou menos 83 anos. E a minha última aventura é junto com o Sérgio. Depois eu posso explicar outra vez, não agora. Mas eu queria mesmo pegar também o gancho do Sérgio, porque eu tenho uma dificuldade, uma dúvida sobre a tradução da palavra wonder. E, inclusive, ela já é traduzida também, porque eu penso que a palavra alemã, staunen, é muito melhor, porque não tem uma conotação nem para bonito, nem para nada, né? Mas é realmente se jogar dentro, é alemão. Então, eu tenho esse problema mesmo, assim, dessa palavra, eu sempre procuro uma outra palavra, espanto, não sei o quê, tem várias palavras, mas nada é tão bom quanto essa palavra que existe em alemão, parece, staunen, né? Porque justamente isso, eu posso fazer um staunen, um wonder, um assombro, para algo que não é bonito mesmo, que é feio mesmo, né? Isso que é nossa tarefa, eu penso, no mundo agora, fazer esse staunen para algo que não é bonito, né? Que acontece cada vez mais. Isso é uma coisa. Outra coisa que eu fiquei com uma pergunta mesmo, porque falou bastante do ver, do olhar, do observar, e a minha trajetória, vamos supor, né? Na vida, e a minha percepção daquilo tem muito a ver com outros órgãos de sentido e não só com a visão. Então, isso é uma pergunta mesmo, né? Como que é tudo isso se a pessoa não enxerga, ela é cega por nascença, por exemplo. Só para completar isso, eu tenho agora assim, uma pessoa que me ajuda, ela é cega. Ela me ajuda até para coisas incríveis. Ela é 99% cega. Ela tem um pouquinho de não cego. E ela me ajuda na informática. Então, como que é tudo isso com outros órgãos de sentido que essa pessoa provavelmente desenvolveu? Obrigada.
Uta, I think that we use the word observation and seeing very broadly in terms of the senses, and for me, most definitely, it is how we gather understanding of the world through the active participation of all of our senses. You can.
So I just want to respond to the other. It's weird because when people raise their hands, they go to the top left-hand corner of the screen, and then when they've asked their question, they go back to their seats, which is very strange. It's good to see you, Uta. It's very wonderful to see you here today, and I have a little question for you in a moment. But I want to say about the word wonder, I really, really appreciate your bringing the German that you've brought, although you've only said the word in German, which doesn't help me much because it's not another word, it's still wonder in English. But
I haven't heard it. I didn't hear the word, Anna, when you said it in German, and I would love to hear it again.
Staunen.
Staunen. Okay.
I just want to say that I've lost track who the first questioner was. Clarissa.
Yeah.
Clarissa's point is an important one, maybe slightly differently from the way she was meaning it, I'm not sure. I have never thought of wonder as necessarily beauty or joy.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty for me, or the wonder for me, is that if we see through to the heart of a situation, which may be a viciously shadowy and evil situation, but if we can see through to what is really happening, for me at least, that is wonder. To see the truth, let's say, of a situation. And sometimes that truth, and we know that more than ever now, that truth can be a vicious truth. It can be a devastating truth, but it is real, and it is the thing that we have to work with. And that is where I experience the wonder.
Yeah. And for me, it connects very much these two ideas of truth and beauty, that it doesn't matter how ugly the truth is, that we are able to see it, to face it, to name it, to know it, is redemptive. And that redemptive action carries its own beauty, no matter what the content of what we are seeing, and I say seeing in the broadest term, is.
I want to ask, please, my quick question of Uta, because since you came into the room, so to speak, I've been looking at your name on your screen.
Yes.
And I want to know if Humani, if it reads Humani, and are you referring to Mani?
I'm referring, em português. Esse nome eu mesmo inventei para juntar algo que, para mim, é a essência do da minha vida, que é tentar entender o ser humano e ativar o humano nos outros, para eu ser mais humana.
Okay.
E eu
Thank
tenho,
you.
espera aí, eu tenho uma ligação com Mani. Colocar luz dentro da escuridão.
Yeah, about money. She is a connection with money.
Thank you very, very much, Ursula.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Nobody asked this. You're the first who asked this.
We were chatting about it together because we noticed it immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Muito obrigada. Tínhamos acho que uma Raquel que levantou a mão, mas talvez tenha desistido. Não? Ana, você vê mais alguém? Mais alguma colocação?
Eu quero falar uma coisa, eu não consigo levantar a mão aqui nesse negócio, que eu sou meio devagar com a informática.
Por favor.
Muito obrigada pela fala de vocês. E eu acho que o maravilhamento, ele fala do encontro.
I'm sorry, we are listening to the Portuguese and not the English at the moment.
Alguma coisa eu tenho que trocar. It's okay now?
Yes.
A palavra maravilhamento, ela é realmente maravilhosa, porque ela fala do encontro. O encontro que a gente tem com as coisas, né? Pode ser a coisa mais devastadora, mas é um encontro. E eu acho que ela tem uma precisão muito bela, no sentido de que ela é ampla, no sentido de que ela pode estar até relacionada com uma coisa trágica, mas ela fala muito da surpresa do encontro. É isso.
Eu gostaria de falar também.
Tião, acho que Tião também levantou a mão, né? E mais quem agora falou?
A Gu.
Gu.
Foi a Gu.
Obrigada, Tião.
Oi, Gu, pode falar antes.
Muito obrigada. Bom dia a todos. Realmente é um prazer estar vendo essa comunidade enorme.
Parece...
com esse encontro de Allan Sul. Eu queria retomar um pouco o que a Uti trouxe sobre a visão, o olhar, né? E a questão do maravilhamento. Ainda que a Su tenha colocado algumas coisas, acho que eu queria retomar um pouco o que eu aprendi muito com você, Allan Su, sobre os órgãos de percepção, né? E o quanto que a gente ativa ele como um todo para esse processo do encontro, ou do maravilhamento, ou da surpresa, né, o que a gente está chamando. E trazer essa questão, né, principalmente para esse momento que a gente está hoje, onde a gente se relaciona e se encontra com o outro, e mesmo a percepção de corpo, né, se a gente pensa nos centros urbanos, é muito pela tela plana, né? A gente usa muito a visão, e o quanto a gente, para se sentir um pouco mais centrado e se auto-perceber nesse momento de pandemia, né, e de afastamento, né, de uma identidade social que a gente tem, a gente está precisando ativar todos esses órgãos, né, para se encontrar, né, para se acolher e para conseguir perceber o outro através da tela. Então, queria só comentar isso e que vocês comentassem essa situação de pandemia também nesse momento, se vocês puderem. Obrigada.
Pandemia. I think, Gu, that in this time, our humanity is so much under assault. And in a way, it feels to me that that which makes us quintessentially human is being contracted and diminished. And I think that we have to work actively and very hard, for example, to keep all our senses awakened and enlivened at all times, because those senses are our connection with the living world. And when we become more and more reliant through this medium on only our vision and a bit on our hearing, the world, as from everything we've been saying today, the world itself contracts. So everything becomes in a state of contraction. And the awareness of what it means to keep all of that alive and active and engaged in us is very, very important. Thank you for bringing that up.
I just want to add that you bring up something at the end of this process, Gu, that is so much, you know, it's hard even to engage in a process like this within the world that we're living in at the moment. So it goes way beyond perception, in a sense. We are, the situation that we are in is forcing this online reality. So the kind of separation that we experience in this online reality, which we can see visually again by looking at the screen, we're all looking at the same screen. And we're all seeing human beings put into little boxes and speaking out of our little prisons and separated from each other. It's not the way we are. So even that is an erosion of what it means to be human. And there are many erosions of what it means to be human at the moment. One of them goes back to other aspects of what we were talking about today, like, for example, self-reflection and self-observation. We are told not to be self-reflecting and self-observing. Life moves too quickly, and anyway, somebody has the answer, and it's not us. Somebody out there has an answer. Some people have one answer, other people have another answer. But the respect that we need to have for ourselves, to take the time to do the research, to think something through, and to think my own response to that through, that is one of the greatest erosions that we're experiencing at the moment. And I would go so far as to say that all we're talking about phenomenology today, the very subtlety, the enigmatic ambiguity of how phenomenology works, of our relationship with the world, it's all under threat at the moment. And we have to find a lot of strength and centeredness inside ourselves.
And courage.
And courage to make our own meaning. The heart of the human being, which is the ability to make meaning for ourselves, is the thing which is most threatened.
Muito obrigada. Talvez a última pergunta do Tião Guerra.
Maravilha, prima. Bom, antes de trazer a minha questão, primeiro eu quero dizer da felicidade que é poder, num sábado de manhã, estar aqui no calor dessa comunidade e rever pessoas queridas e ver pessoas que a gente ainda não conhece, mas a gente celebra uma comunidade crescente em quantidade e em qualidade. E também quero reconhecer como a Faculdade Rudolf Steiner tem cumprido esse papel, porque é interessante, cada vez mais eu me vejo participando de encontros promovidos pela Faculdade Rudolf Steiner. Então, isso para mim é uma grande alegria, uma felicidade profunda. A gente desejou muito isso, esse momento, e ver ele acontecendo, trazendo luz para dentro da barriga do dragão é maravilhoso. Então, assim, uma grande celebração. Allan e Sue e todo mundo que está aqui. A questão que eu quero trazer... Estão me ouvindo bem? A questão que eu quero trazer é... Eu vou tentar falar, porque ela está, assim, vulcânica dentro de mim. Eu diria que é assim... Essa conquista dessa forma de percepção, o quanto dela acontece de uma forma romântica, digamos assim, em algum lugar no futuro, aonde a gente vai alcançar, então, uma nova percepção e a gente vai, num futuro, desenvolver órgãos sutis de percepção. Então, se a gente caminhar e for, então a gente alcança alguma situação. O quanto é assim e o quanto é agora, nesse momento. Eu estou aqui e eu estou, digamos, na melhor situação perceptiva e eu já estou praticando esse espanto, assombro, maravilhamento, ou seja, eu trabalho muitos anos com educação e vejo o quanto existe algum tipo de sofrimento nessa ideia de que uma situação vai ser alcançada um dia, ao contrário de dizer hoje e agora o que está ocorrendo. Enfim, como dialoga essas duas situações? Eu não sei se vocês conseguem entender, mas é uma sensação de emergência, o que emerge nesse momento e o que eu posso dizer de mim nesse momento. E não sabe, um vir a ser, mas é um vir a ser um pouco doentio, sabe assim, meio... Eu tenho que vir a ser alguma coisa, né? E agora? O que eu estou vindo a ser agora nesse momento? Então, é um pouco esse dilema muito central para mim, né? Não faço ideia se eu consegui me entender, mas assim, é isso.
I want to say, from what happens for me when you say what you say, is that I don't feel that I am thinking about the future, only in the sense that every single thing that we are doing right now is creating the future that is coming towards us. So I'm not trying to prepare myself for a better future, but recognizing with the deepest sense of responsibility that how I practice everything in this moment is what is building the future that is coming towards me. So in that sense, the past, the The future is contained in the present. And I feel that it's up to me and up to everyone to find that place of responsibility to be practicing in a way that can enable a different kind of future, but that practicing is now.
So I agree completely with what Sue said. I don't have anything to add. My question is, why do you raise the question that you've raised? I don't follow why you've raised it out of what has emerged today. What are you feeling?
Então, Allan, justamente essa sensação de que, enfim, eu ofereço vários cursos, vários processos, várias oficinas. É como se as pessoas tivessem um cardápio de atividades que elas têm que cumprir para alcançar alguma coisa, não é? Então é como se a gente entrasse num processo clássico de formação. Então a gente precisa fazer isso, depois fazer aquilo, depois de alcançar aquilo. É como se a gente organizasse essa construção do maravilhamento, do espanto e do assombro, como se a gente organizasse isso num tempo e em passos, sabe? Primeiro esse passo, depois aquele passo e depois aquele passo. E como se isso criasse uma fantasia de conquista planejada ou de conquista futura, e me parece que a coisa acontece de uma outra forma, com uma outra lógica. Foi por isso, Allan.
Things do happen in a different logic. And that fantasy, for me, is clearly contradicts a phenomenological understanding. So I think what Sue is saying is correct. It's what we do now.
And how we do it.
How we are.
Mas eu acho que os dois... desculpa.
Pode falar, Tião, termina. Primo.
Oi?
Termina.
Agora é Tião 2, é Sérgio.
Não, é que eu acho, pensando no que o Tião falou, eu acho que assim, é que é o conflito mesmo que a gente tem entre esses dois aspectos da vida, né? Esse aspecto presente fenomenológico e o aspecto, vamos dizer, do conhecimento, do que a gente tem de conhecimento. E a gente tem que aprender a viver com essas duas coisas. Eu, como médico, por exemplo, eu tenho que o tempo inteiro viver com essas duas coisas, com o que se sabe e com o que eu sei, na verdade. Mas eu não posso me afastar de um ou do outro. Eu tenho que estar com as duas coisas o tempo todo. Sei lá.
Ute.
Obrigada, Sérgio. Vamos para a Ute? A última agora mesmo, é que a Ute não dá para a gente cortar, né? Então, Ute, você fecha as perguntas.
Ute, você está no mudo, a gente...
Bem rápido, é uma concepção do tempo. E o passado, dentro do presente, está cada vez mais compreendido, com os traumas, por exemplo. Que o futuro, aquilo que a Sue falou, o futuro está no presente, é o novo que devemos trabalhar.
Muito obrigada. Eu estou muito triste de terminar. Eu gostaria de continuar aqui por mais algum tempo, mas eu vejo que chegamos a uma finalização e sem palavras para agradecer a presença de todos vocês e sem palavras para agradecer esse momento com Allan e a Sue, tão rico, onde a gente vê que aquilo que a Faculdade Rudolf Steiner quer realizar, a missão da Faculdade Rudolf Steiner está realmente conseguindo galgar aí os seus passos, conseguindo trazer esse passado para dentro, o futuro para dentro desse nosso momento. E ficamos muito, muito felizes com a participação de vocês. E Ana Paula, uma incrível tradutora, né? Não sei como ela faz isso. Muito, muito obrigada. Maravilhoso poder contar com ela nesses eventos, com tanta disposição. E também Ana Biglione e todos os outros que fazem parte do grupo estão aqui presentes, Maria do Carmo, da Faculdade Rudolf Steiner. E as perguntas que vocês fizeram, muito, muito obrigada, isso enriquece essa conversa. E eu espero que todos tenham daqui para frente um sábado muito rico, com todas essas novas formas de olhar para o nosso sábado de uma maneira fenomenológica. Agradecer à Federação pelo Zoom, porque ele tinha essa possibilidade de tradução, né? E o nosso ajudante técnico, Lucas, que tentou resolver algumas das nossas dificuldades. Pedimos desculpas pelo problema tecnológico, porque o Zoom, na verdade, ele está autorizado para 500 pessoas, mas de alguma forma ele bloqueou, não sabemos o que aconteceu, corremos um pouco, mas conseguimos, atrasado, transmitir pelo YouTube da Federação. E a gravação vai estar disponível em breve no site da Faculdade Rudolf Steiner, na ala webinar. Então, ele vai estar por lá, tá? Fiquem à vontade de usar, compartilhar e tudo mais. Sejam muito bem-vindos e estejam presentes nas nossas atividades, que tentamos que sejam esse alimento para esse momento, que sejam um enriquecimento para tempos difíceis que estamos vivendo. Ana, passo a palavra para vocês e agradeço imensamente a todos.
Não, acho que você já falou tudo, eu só fico celebrando a possibilidade da gente abrir essas qualidades de conversa que acordam a gente internamente, esses sentidos, com vontade com essa sensação mesmo de que isso nesse momento é muito fundamental, que a gente possa se nutrir, e celebro muito essa quantidade, celebro a gente ter tido problema com as pessoas chegando, acho que me dá essa notícias de que de alguma maneira a gente está em busca, né, de se acordar, de se desenvolver nesse lugar, e isso me diz do hoje e me diz do futuro. Então é só agradecer esse espaço e a presença de vocês todos, enfim, nesse caminhar juntos aí que a gente tem construído. Então, obrigada, Allan e Sue, em especial, por abrirem esse espaço nesse momento, na vida, enfim, e muita alegria de estar aqui. Tchau, gente. Bom sábado.
Thank you. And from us also, thank you very, very much for this encounter. Tchau.
Tchau, gente. Obrigada.
Obrigada.
Tchau, pessoal. Muito obrigado.
Obrigada.
Até a próxima.
Obrigada.
Obrigada. Foi bom.
Até a próxima.
Obrigada, beijos.
Tchau.
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 Tchau, obrigada.
É a Andy ali?
Vem aí.
Sou eu, Melanie, demais. Vim aqui porque não dava para entrar na minha casa. Ai, a minha vizinha.
Oi, Roberta, Andy.
Ai, que delícia.
Não dá vontade de sair, né?
Adorei a pessoa que colocou aqui, acho que foi o Tom, colocou, vou ouvir What a Wonderful World, em homenagem a esse encontro. Adorei, fiquei com vontade de ouvir também aqui.
Bom, temos que ir, né? Tchau, tchau, gente. Obrigado.
Tchau.
Obrigado, Ana. Obrigado, Melanie.
Tchau.
Obrigada, Sérgio, pela presença.
Obrigada.
Tchau.
Eu gostei do meu parente. Meu primo.
Acho que pode já também parar a gravação, né, Melanie?
Perfeito.